One Punch Dad, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? I super excited for this. Been watching your content for a long, long time, and you bring a lot of happiness to people that I work with. So I'm glad we're gonna be able to sit down and talk.
I'm excited to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. Well, for people that don't know, One Punch Dad here, Instagram, YouTube. He's a active duty U.S. Army warrant officer, content creator, a voice actor, and a musician. And I would even add in a comedian. And if you don't know who One Punch Dad is, go onto social media and he does pitch perfect impersonations of individuals that serve in the Army. Brings a lot of joy to people that serve or have served and can see the actual correlation and relation to it.
Well, thank you. Pitch Perfect is the first time I've heard that one, so thank you.
I mean, pretty spot. I mean, looking at the shirt, like pretty spot on, man. Like it's great. The new series you came out with, I actually had somebody send it to me this morning, and they
Oh,
said that
wonderful.
they said the division CSM was pretty spot on.
I'm glad that one took. So sometimes I roll out a new character. It's kind of a dice roll whether it's gonna resonate with people or not. But I'm glad the Division CSM is kind of a leap from the battalion guy that I've been doing for several years now. He's battalion. My experience is kind of the battalion level sergeant majors are they're younger, they're a little more hungry, they still got that fire and brimstone. Once they get up to the kind of the G level staff, you can tell they're tired, and they're just kind of trying to whatever, maintain standards and all that stuff, but also just kind of like, let's get it over with. Come on. So
How do you? I want to dive into too, like how do you pick the characters and everything else, and how you got started. But as we do that, I wanted to kind of give everybody your dive into your life story. How you got started, where you grew up, and how everything went.
yeah. So I grew up in Amarillo, Texas, in the Panhandle, smack. It's like the midway point on I-40, pretty much. I've met tons of people in the Army. I think I've met maybe 4 or 5 people in 18 years that are actually from Amarillo. It's a town that people go through a lot, but not a lot of people stop. And there's not a draw there except, I think, we got the Big Texan where you can eat a 72-ounce steak in an hour. You get it for free. That's about the only noteworthy stop. In the Cadillac Ranch. We got the Cadillac Ranch in Amarillo, Texas. So
It's funny. Actually, I had a medic. I had a medic that was from Amarillo. Now that I
no
think about it,
kidding.
yeah, but he was prior service, so he's in Desert Storm. Then he got out, and then he came in, like, kind of came back in like 2010 or something. So,
Wow.
dude, yeah, he smoked like 2 packs a day. He started his day off with a full pack. I'm gonna go full power Green Monster before he came to PT. And he was 40, and he looked like he was way older.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
But that dude can take some damage if he needs to.
dude, 1,000%.
Thanks. But yeah, I grew up there, man. It's quiet, conservative Texas town. Pretty normal family. Mm. I kind of took an interest in theater a little bit in high school. Started learning guitar when I was probably 13 or 14 years old. My mom wanted me to learn so I could play in church. I wanted to learn so I could play Metallica. So I kind of spiraled from there. It's funny, my parents, so I was listening to like Metallica and stuff, and they didn't like that. Obviously, this is back in the 90s. So they got me a Christian metal CD from the local like Christian record store, which actually kind of further plunged me into like deeper, more underground, like heavy music. So it had the reverse effect, I think, that they thought it might have. But anyway, yeah, I grew up. I was playing music with friends in school. Played in a couple bands. At one point, I think I very seriously wanted to be a musician. Didn't really work out. There were not a lot of huge music acts coming out of Amarillo, Texas at the time. So that kind of burned out. Started doing theater. I did professional theater. It was kind of my last big job before I joined the military. I was 19, I think. Really good show, really fun. It paid, and it was a blast. I loved being on stage. I love acting. It was a musical, so I got to sing. And then the show ended, and I didn't really have anything to do after that. I didn't audition for anything on the back end because I wasn't a particularly motivated teenager, and I needed money. So ended up joining the Army at 19 in 2008. Yeah, 2008. So almost exactly 18 years ago right now. And at that point, I kind of like in my mind, I was like, I guess I'm not ever going to be a musician or an actor. I guess I'm doing this now. And then as I kind of got used to the military lifestyle, music and stuff kind of was still in my life. It was at least still something I enjoyed. It wasn't something I thought like, man, It's especially in the military, like joining a band in the military is very difficult because you're completely transient. Everyone else around you is transient. Um, so it's very rare I got the opportunity to play with other people as I went through that. Went warrant officer in 15. Just I was enjoying my job. Being an NCO was hard work. It was good work, but it was hard work. It was kind of wearing me out. So I put a packet in with the mindset of like it's either this or I'm just gonna get out and see what I can do.
Were you always in ADA, or for people that know, air defense as an
I
NCO
was,
too?
yeah. When I enlisted as a 14 Juliet, which is not a thing anymore, didn't have a clue what it was or what the job was. I was prepared to go like I think it was like I told my dad I was like I'll go MP or infantry or whatever. Like I really didn't care at the time. I'll do whatever they got. Infantry was not available. Um it was like a bunch of like 25 series like signal jobs, and then the air defense stuff, which was so 14 Juliet kind of briefed like a signal job. There was a lot of like they talked about like data links and you'll do long hours in the field and all this stuff, but they had like radars and they showed the weapon systems and all that too. I was like, okay, all right, yeah, sure. So I picked that, not knowing any better.
Yeah, and
And
if
then about
people don't know, like, ADA, especially for the conventional side of the army, is one of the most deployed units because there's just not enough of them, and everybody wants them.
I lost you again. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Sorry, man. I don't know if that's me or you.
I don't know either. It's showing it's uploaded on both ends.
All right. Well, you're saying about conventional ADA
Yeah, I was just saying, for people that don't know, like, ADA is one of the most, if not the most deployed units on the active duty side.
going on. Are you there, man?
I got you now.
I think it might actually be on my end, man. It looks like my internet is kind of cutting in and out tonight. I apologize for that.
You're good. Yeah,
I guess we could just roll and just kind of chop through it.
yeah. Let's go.
I'm
10:30.
sorry about that, man. I'm not sure what's going on. Kind of makes me yeah, it looks steady right now. Okay. Sorry
You're
about
good,
that,
yeah.
man.
No, you're good. I was looking down at it. It says your side is, like, starting upload, so that's why I was wondering if it was you or me. That's good.
Yeah, it might be me.
No, you're fine. No, I was just saying that for people that don't know, like, ADA in the Army is, like, one of the most deployed organizations, or MOSs, because there's just not enough of them.
It is, man. It is. And it's one of those things that even after we shuttered Iraq, however many times we've done that at this point, and then, it is still one of those warfighting functions that's continually being utilized in Syria and Iraq. And I mean, it's saving lives. When I came in, it was still kind of like, oh, we got Patriot, but we're not really using Patriot because we're doing coin at the time. But now with the kind of the geopolitical state of everything and the use of rockets and TBMs and stuff like that, we've seen a pretty good uptick in air defenders seeing doing their job. And it's a technical job too, so it's not to throw any shade, but not anyone can just come in and do that. So
Yeah, I was fortunate this last year to go down. Actually, I ended up seeing you during the VIP visit when Dan Driscoll was down there, but, yeah, I came down for a course, but it was real quick, and I saw you off in the distance, and then I didn't get a chance to come by because, for people that don't know, those entourages that come in, dude, it's just a massive influx of the guy who's gonna be there to talk to everybody, and then all his cronies with a notebook.
yeah. Yeah, so funny story about that, if I can, quick aside. So he had no clue who I was, by the way, and that's not the first time that that's happened. So I've had people reach out to me. Same thing happened with the Sergeant Major of the Army, came to Fort Sill, and it's his cronies that they'll watch my stuff, and they're big fans, and I appreciate that. But whatever, whoever's watching, I'm down for it. And they're like, "Hey, do you want to meet the Sergeant Major of the Army, or you want to meet the Secretary of the Army?" And I'm like, I guess, yeah, why not? Sure. And then I get to meet that BIP, that person, and they're like, "Who's this? What do you do? Oh, you make the videos. Okay. All right. Cool, man." It's like, I kind of want to just disappear forever right now. This is embarrassing. So, and it makes it look like I was the one who's like, "Let me meet him. Let me meet him." Anyway, but yeah, it's crazy, man. You should have come said hi. Wish you had.
Yeah, I was yeah. But, yeah, dude, it's just a funny sight. For people that don't know, like, when you stand around and it's their staff, it's everybody,
They roll deep.
yeah,
They roll with I mean, he had a couple, people shuttles with him, moving
Yeah.
people around. So it was crazy. Anyway, yeah, I did air defense for a while. Went warrant, did that in 2015. So I've been doing that for a little over 10 years now. I love it. I'm glad I did. It saved the army for me, in my opinion, because like I said, I was getting burnt out as an NCO. That was kind of when I started allowing music and stuff to kind of come back into my life a little bit more, in terms of like playing regularly. So I was starting to kind of record my own stuff, just in my garage and whatnot. 2020 with COVID, that was kind of when TikTok really hit the scene, and people were like normal people were making videos and stuff. And I saw a video of uh, she doesn't really make content anymore in this vein, but she was a CW3 warrant officer, had made kind of just like a funny lip sync video, and it was people were really enjoying it and responding to it. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. I should do that, and I did, and it took off mainly because people saw. So I did it in uniform, which I don't really do anymore, but people saw that I was a warrant officer, and they were like, "Whoa, what are you?" And that kind of was the beginning of like people kind of turning their eye to anything that I had to say. Over time, I kind of started working it. So initially, I was just doing like goofy, like lip sync stuff that everyone kind of did back then. And then I started working in a little more me in it and kind of putting my performance and my voice in it. And that wasn't too long after that that I started kind of like doing the characters and kind of messing around with like, okay, what do I see on a regular basis? What does everyone see on a regular basis that's hilarious and we don't talk about it? And that was when the first character I did was the lieutenant colonel. And and that people were just like, dude, nailed it. So just kind of took off from there. But that kind
Have you had anybody of those ranks come up to you and talk to you and talk about like the impression?
absolutely. So the most hilarious part about it to me is that the biggest audience for each character is the one that's being made fun of. Majors all the time come to me and laugh and talk about how funny the major, the kind of like mousy little stuck up major is. They love that. SAR majors, I have a buddy. She was like, "Yeah, we watch your videos at USASMA all the time."
That's awesome.
It's made. They're made with love, right? Not
Yeah.
one of my videos have ever made to be like, this guy completely sucks. If you see him, you know, tell him "f you" or anything like they're made out of adoration. Like the lieutenant colonel's based on a guy I worked for, and he knows that, and he found it very, he was kind of flattered by it, if anything. So it's they're made with a little bit of love sprinkled in there.
No, I think I think that's the great part too, because not only it's for guys that have served. I mean, the ones people I know that have gotten out years ago, they're the ones that are at range control, like those videos, and they laugh at them now because they're like, "Man, I am exactly what I used to laugh at." And you see them, and you're like, "Dude, that's 100% right."
Yeah.
Everybody can laugh about it. Like,
Yeah, some people know, like, some people are like, "Dude, I do this." Like, I have done what is being lampooned in this video, which is funny to me, but we all do, like, there's stuff in there that some of those characters do that I do, like, sometimes I'll be talking to my kid and Sergeant Major comes out, and it's stuff that we all just kind of, like, through osmosis and being in this job and this environment for so long, we all kind of adopt and just say things a certain odd way without you do it enough, you don't realize you're doing it, so having it reflected back at you, I think, is what kind of keys people in on why it's funny in a way.
has it changed your career at all? Or because you just mentioned, and I know you're a father, and I want to dive into that too. But even your kids being at school around the area, has anybody said, "Hey, man, is that your dad?" or anything on there?
So that has happened a little bit. Being in a military town, or on a military base, which is where I work, you know, that's my target audience. So I get spotted there quite a bit. And then, my kids have had their teachers and friends, kind of like, is this your dad? They're kind of numb to it. I think they think it's cool. Like it's not something that they're embarrassed about or anything. Yeah, they're just kind of like, yeah, yeah, my dad's, slightly internet famous. So yeah, they get a kick out of it. for a long time they wanted to be in the videos, and I would kind of let them, kind of, we would, if I had a gag, I'd put them in there. I've kind of chilled on that just because I've gotten very protective over recent years of them, and just kind of like realizing, especially as they get older, it really needs to be their choice if they're going to put themselves out there. And so I've kind of leaned away from that. But yeah, they're they think it's cool.
That's awesome. I 100% agree with you, especially in today's age. I've got 2 kids and my oldest being 12, and they still don't have phones yet, but it's looking, you're coming up on that point, but you look at it and they have you're giving the world access to them, and how early do you wanna do that, and how early do you want, them to be out there, and I mean, I think that's spot on.
Yeah, it's scary. it's it's a terrifying age to be raising kids in for sure. And it's, a lot of times, there's plenty of danger outside the door, but just hand them an iPad and the risk is there, so you do have to you have to monitor, and you got to be aware. So, but yeah,
Yeah, what's it been, so it's not even like the fatherhood stuff, what's it been like for you, your experience raising kids since you've been in? Uh, were they there during the transition when you went to go weren't while you were in NCO?
they were. So my oldest is also 12 actually.
Okay.
So he was quite young, and then my oldest daughter. So I have 4 kids. My oldest daughter was born 2 days before I went to walks. So she almost didn't make it. I was like, dude, she's gonna be born. I'm gonna be gone. I gotta go to school. But thankfully that didn't happen. But so my older two were very young when I crossed over, and then made it through the school pipeline, and then we had the other two. It was tough. My early years as a warrant officer, I was gone quite a bit for long stints. I was mostly an Indo-PACOM, so nothing lives at risk really or anything like that, but just gone at a frequency that was just kind of, it was challenging. Did that for a couple of years, and then thankfully, we came to Fort Sill in 2019, and it's been a lot less on the road time away from them. So that's been good. Um, raising kids in the military not easy, man. It's you're transient. Before we got stable at Fort Sill, it was like every 2.5, 3 years we were moving again. Now that I'm kind of in the twilight of my career, I can kind of, we're a little settled now. I'm not necessarily sure that we're going to stay where I'm at, but I can at least give my kids some stability for a time. That's been good.
Yeah, at 100%. I've done 8 PCSs in 19 years, and it's weird to look back, and I'm gonna throw out a shout out to Denny. He's the host of the Security Help podcast. He's the one I had texted you about a while back, and he actually put a post out yesterday and said, "You're always gonna long for one more ride with the boys, one more, cold weather training, one more raid, one more this." But he's like, "Never forget that what you wished for is what you have right or where you're at right now."
Yeah.
And
There's there there's a lot of truth to that.
there is like when you're still in the grind, like you are, I'm sure there's those days you're like, oh man, that'd be really cool to go do that. But then you think back of all those times you were gone and all you wanted to do is be home and hang out with them, because it can be rough, man. It can be rough.
It is weird, like, the balance is crazy, and, like, I work in a cubicle now, and I'm not on the road ever, so it is kind of a thing where it's just like, I'm steeped in convenience in my life, and there was kind of an appreciation that you would get from those stints where you would go out to the field and you would spend a week sleeping on a cot that you couldn't get the bottom bar to lock in, and then you come home to your bed, and you're like, "Yeah, this is this is the life." It's because you had that contrast, I guess, readily available. I do miss raiding with the boys, absolutely. Like, even I'm still active duty, but I still will get up from my desk and go to where the soldiers are because I just feel so much more where I belong when I'm with people wearing a uniform. So yeah, and that's, once I retire, I think that's probably definitely going to be the case. So it's a weird thing.
Yeah, no, I can 100% agree with that. And like since you've all those times that you've had away from home, and then being away from the kids, what are some of those hardships that you faced that you think other young people that are living with that now can relate to?
I mean, it's you miss stuff, you know. I've missed some birthdays here and there, so that's always a bummer. No, when the kids have questions, you know, the kids are gonna don't quite understand why you have to go. The hardship it puts on your spouse can be tough, you know, especially when you got young kids and you're like, I gotta go for 6 weeks. You're gonna be riding solo, and you know, I'm a single parent now, and I really see with clearer eyes, like if you don't do it, it doesn't happen. So it's when you have to go and leave your spouse who's presumably not military, which I don't even know what dual military couples do or have to do, but you know, you're putting a lot on your spouse when you leave, you know, and you just kind of hope that you're in a situation where, you know, like my parents live 3 hours away. So we have a lot of familial support in the area that we can kind of call on. A lot of people don't have that luxury. You know, we were stationed in Washington at one point, had no family up there. So, you know, you're completely reliant on a community of friends at that point. It can put a strain on the relationship too. You know, you go for 6 weeks and you come home and you're like, I'm home, honey. Like you are kind of foreign to that person a little bit, and they can be to you, you know, and you pick up habits while you're gone, you know, you
Yeah.
go somewhere and you're in the field and not showering once a week or not at all, or just, you know, letting the farts rip, you know, there's a lot of stuff you got to unlearn when you go home. So it's just, you know, there's multiple aspects of having to be gone, especially in the military, that makes it uniquely challenging to come back even, you know, even though that's kind of like the coveted, like we're all waiting to hear index, you know, so we can go home and crack a beer and sleep on satin sheets and all that. And there's an adjustment period that happens after that that I think we don't talk about quite a bit, but
You made a good point. I know I have. Have you found later in your career now that when you think back, right? You had those older guys that came in when you were younger and they're like, "Hey guys, you can implement this change now." And you're like, "No, I can't. There's no way. I'm just an E5 or I'm an E6." Or now that you're later in your career, do you see like any mentorship opportunities when you look at people? I know I do, and I say, "Hey man, you might only be a sergeant or an E6, but you really can affect what happens in the walls of your home. You really can try and
yeah.
shape your organization and leave and make sure your kid's soccer practice is like staying at work till 2000 every day is probably not the right answer, you know?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of people, uh, maybe not a lot, but there's certain people that feel like to leave that palm print on an organization, they need to be a martyr. They need to be the guy who, you know, I know guys who will stay till 1900 f- when no one asks them to. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? When the work's not due first thing in the morning, and it's like, is it you know, like genuine curiosity, is it performative or is it just so you are, you know, are you that terrified you're going to miss something or what is it? But for me, man, especially when it comes to working around junior soldiers and those younger families or like those startup families that you're kind of modeling for, they're going to do what you do. You know, they do what's modeled for them. So if they see the senior leadership raking themselves over the coals and ignoring their family and, you know, constantly putting things that are really going to matter after their army career on the back burner, they're going to grow up and do that, and they're going to grow up and insist that their soldiers do that too. And I mean, you know, that's not to say being in the military is a sacrificial job. Sometimes you have to tell your spouse and your kids, I have to go, or I can't come home yet, or I have to stay here. You know, I've had to have that conversation many, many times. But on the days where I didn't have to stay or I didn't have to go, I went home because at the end of the day, especially now at the twilight of my career and spending time around a lot of people that are now out of the army, if you hear them talk, they will tell you family lasts. Family is forever, man. The army, when you get out, you could be a colonel. You could be a former brigade commander. The day they hand you that folded flag and slap you on the back, you're Brad. You're Jason. They don't care. Thanks for your service. Get out.
Yeah,
It's it
dude, I one of the guys that's on this team, he just retired, and, when you go to PCS, you get your paperwork, they stamp it, and you're like, "Alright, I'm on my way," and he's like, "Dude, it was no different when I got my DD-214. I literally it got stamped, they handed it to me and said, 'Next,' and he's like, and I drove off post." And it made me think I had a sergeant major a few years ago that gave it all, man. I mean, just he was the guy. He was the guy that was there, and, I talked to him right when he retired, and he's like, "I got nobody coming to my ceremony, man. It's just me. I gave it all to the Army, and I got my kids aren't there, my wife's not there."
I think that comes from you talked about like an organizational impact that we all kind of want to have. I don't think it's wrong. A lot of what I do is for the Air Defense Artillery branch these days. I work at the Department of Training and Doctrine right now and trying to implement doctrine in our schools, specifically for the warrant officers, that's going to make them effective warrant officers. And that's going to make effective warrant officers 10 years from now when I've been retired for several years. I don't think it's bad to want to do things like that. But I've started at this stage in my career placing a lot more emphasis on the individual encounters that I have with people. Had just a couple weeks ago, I went in to speak to a brand new class of basic warrant officer basic course students who were just starting the course to learn how to be a 140 Alpha, which is what I am. And one of the guys, after I got done talking, he got up and he said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember this, but you came and spoke to my basic training course or my AIT course, excuse me, 19, and you encouraged me to take my job seriously and learn my craft. And now he's here in front of me. He's going to school to be a warrant officer, not six years later." And it wasn't some kind of tremendous like, oh yes, I'm doing this for all of air defense artillery moment that
Yeah.
caused that. It was me having a moment with that kid and just being like, hey man, I know all this stuff sounds like Chinese to you right now, but if you take it seriously, take some good notes and try to, get down there and learn these systems, eventually it's going to pay off and you'll get to do way cooler stuff. And, someday, who knows, maybe you can be a warrant officer. Those one-on-one encounters as I get older have a much more meaningful impact to me as an individual. I'd rather just put my hand on one kid's shoulder and be like, "You got this, man. You can do it." Rather than try to be like, "Oh, he made some sweeping change for the branch and we used to do this and now we do it this way." Who gives a shit? Like this kid changed his life and changed the trajectory of his life based on some encouragement that I gave him. And that feels way more massive to me in a weird way.
Nobody ever remembers, for people who graduate college, like, nobody remembers who speaks at your commencement speech, right? It's
Yeah,
the people that go down and interact. That dude is
exactly.
always gonna remember you. He's always gonna remember that you believed in him.
And like I said, that's worth its weight in gold to me. Those sweeping changes you make to an organization, you probably know just as well as I do. The next guy who comes in behind me, he's gonna be like, "Nope, nope, new sheriff in town. We're not doing any of that anymore." And he's gonna make his own sweeping changes because that's what everyone feels like you have to do at the field grade, kind of upper management level. Is just like, no, I got to reinvent the wheel. No, you know, have an encounter with your soldiers. Put your hand on one kid's shoulder and put an idea in his mind that makes him into a more lethal soldier 10 years down the line. That's change, I think.
Do you think now that you're getting to the tail end of your career and you're spending more time at home, that being a better dad has allowed you to be a better mentor to other people?
So it's funny.
And I don't mean, okay, I should rephrase it. I apologize. Not a better dad, a more present dad. Sorry.
Yeah, it does affect it in a way. It's funny because you said better dad. There's days where I go to bed, man, and I'm like, I'm the worst father on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
I'm ruining these kids. It definitely has changed the way I engage with soldiers. I'm at the stage now where the generational gap is real. I mean, I've been in 18 years. There are kids that are probably at least in the recruiting office right now that weren't alive when I signed up. It it's a big divide, and interacting with my kids and just kind of seeing that they are different in a lot of ways that we were 20 years ago, whatever, but they aren't also. When I came in 18 years ago, everyone told us we were soft. When they came in 18 years before that, their drill sergeants called them probably worse things than we got called, but they were soft.
They went to the last hard class.
Exactly. And I was in a class recently and a couple of the other it was a class about it was certifying people to instruct, and I went being a developer for the course material. But a lot of the instructors are like, "Yeah, I have a hard time because this generation is just so different and it feels like they don't want to work, they don't want to learn." It was like, dude, they said the same thing about my generation when we came in. What is it about people at my stage, our stage, that just that analysis is just a complete phoning in of how to have a relationship with these younger soldiers that are coming in. You say, well, they just don't want to work. They're soft. Like, oh, they're doing what's modeled for them, man. We run the army right now. The generation right now that's like, if you're 17 years and up and you don't like the condition of like how things are, your generation's running the army. Yours and the one that came before you, pretty much. Set a new standard, man. Set a new condition. Cultivate a new climate. You know, yeah, I was soft as hell when I came in the army, dude. I was weak. I was not very reliable. I hated getting up early. I didn't like doing PT. I had good things modeled for me. I had NCOs put their hand on my shoulder and say, hey, man, I know this sucks, but here's why it matters, right? We need you here. I need you here. And it made me want to show up. If you don't have those kind of encounters with your soldiers, you can't expect them to care.
Yeah, and I know we talked earlier about this too, and the organization that I'm building right now is about it's people. Like, how do you take
Right.
care of people? When you look at leadership consulting, when you look at executive coaching, it's exactly what you're talking about. And I just wanted to highlight that because there's so many people I talk to now that are either getting ready to retire or they're getting out, right? They're at that 6, 7 year mark and they're like, I don't know how I'm marketable. And I'm like, everything that you just talked about right there is marketable. How you talk to people, how you take care of people.
It's people don't they don't think about that. You know, that every organization, you know, the army, the military, it's it's a machine that runs on humans. So if you can't as a leader, if you can't look within the people that are going to run your machine for you and identify their strengths and their weaknesses and help them identify their strengths and their weaknesses, then I think you're headed for a disaster there. I think one of the most misunderstood concepts that I've kind of put out there in talking, you know, I'll break character occasionally and just kind of talk mental health, usually men's mental health, because I'm a man, you know, I'm living that. That's my experience. That's my journey. So I normally, when I speak mental health, it's kind of targeted to men and not in a way like, yeah, we got to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But I talk a lot about acknowledging your weakness as a man, and I think that that throws a lot of people off because men don't want to do that typically. We don't want to admit that we're weak. You know, I did a video a couple months ago about crying, about men allowing themselves to weep when they feel sad. That's preventive maintenance in my mind. A man who will allow himself to encounter the things that cause him sorrow, that cause him to feel afraid, and have that sincere, genuine moment with it, whether it makes him cry or not, that is preventive maintenance. A man who understands how he's strong is effective, but a man who understands where he's weak is headed to more strength. He's headed to a place where he is going to get stronger. Understanding your weakness helps you conquer it. And I think as a leader, helping people and kind of educating people how to acquaint themselves with their own strengths and weaknesses, I think that's really the bottom line. Is just helping your people understand what they have inside it, as you said, what they've got inside them that's marketable, that's usable, and that makes them more effective as part of the team and as an individual.
Yeah, and thinking about those guys that were saying this generation's soft and they just don't get it. They don't want to work. They're more analytical now. Imagine if you had a squad full of people that understood what they could say, right? They could say what their strengths and weaknesses are, and they did have a cry, right? And it made the bond stronger. It made them be able to come out and be like, "Hey, man, I feel comfortable being able to say this." Versus, "Hey, suck it up, put it in your rucksack, keep going." Like, yeah, there is a time to be able to go and do that, but
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
we as an institution, I think overall generationally as a country, we're past that point. Like there's no more too much information out there. There's too many lessons learned out there. Like, we're not gonna regress and just put everything in your rucksack and just keep walking. It's okay. It's okay to do something. You know, you see more and more people now in the first responder world and exactly what you're talking about. They're coming out and saying these things. And I would be shocked in the next 5 years if organizations still try and fight that,
Yeah.
you know?
It's been a weird and, you know, like, you know, kinda just watching how the military kinda tries to attack that stuff. It's clunky. It's super clunky. I give 'em I won't say an A for effort. We'll call it a B for effort. But there is an attempt, I think, on the military's part to say, like, look, we're gonna wear these guys out. Or if we keep them 20 years, we're gonna wear them out. We're gonna wear their bodies out. We're gonna put them through a lot of stuff. We're probably gonna cost a good number of them a marriage or two. We're going to, a good population of these people are going to watch their friends die. We acknowledge that. That's the job. They know that. We cannot just assume that that's okay and that they never address that. At the end of the day, the army can only really do so much. The military can only do so much. They can set the framework and put us in a classroom and talk about the value of life and all that stuff. But again, it goes back to like what you're willing to do as a leader. Yeah, whether it's at the team squad level or if you're a company commander or even battalion commander, you know, no, I honestly, I don't expect a lieutenant colonel to remember 3 or 400 people's dogs' names, but there's still an opportunity there for that man to put his hand on some private shoulder and say like, "Hey kid, you got this," you know? That moment that lieutenant colonel might not even remember could be the turning of the tide for that kid. And so I put a lot of emphasis on those little moments. Those things, and likewise, there's a lot of things as leaders we'll say out of the side of our face to a soldier. Oh, you're not good enough, or you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough, or you're not big enough, you're not muscular enough, you're not, you know, you're not keeping up or whatever. That sticks with them. I see that with my kids. You probably do too. Little things that I say, if I were to tell my daughter, like, oh, you're getting a little fat, she might have a complex for the rest of her life. There's things that when you say to your children or to your soldiers as a leader, you have to take care. You have to have care what you say to them because you could change their life for good or for bad.
Yeah, and like, I mean, goes back to that generational gap where people say that newer generations are weak. I argue that you just need to be more articulate because when I look at my family or people I've dealt with, it was tough love, right? And I appreciated some of that. But on one side of my family, there's zero emotion to anything. And because of comments like you just said, it caused the zero emotion. And as I have gotten older, and it kind of goes back to my original question I asked, like being more present, I've noticed I watch what I say about those things because I'm thinking 5, 10 years down the road, like I want to have a relationship with my kids and the people that I interact with, because I'm watching what I say around my kids, it's made me watch what I say around, individuals like outside of my home because I want to have a relationship with people,
Absolutely.
you know?
It's hard, there's a lot of, we kind of, on the progressive side of things, people are a little more easy to slight these days, and you say things that maybe you were raised, we just always said it this way or we always did it this way, and to some people that is an insult, and then a lot of people have the tendency to become defensive in that situation. It sucks to hurt someone's feelings or to upset someone, or I've done it to my kids. I've said things to them while I was maybe even just talking gently to them, and they're like, "I can't believe you said that." And I have to kind of be like, "Okay, listen, what I meant to say or what I was trying to get across, I think you have to have some grace in conversation. You have to be an effective communicator. And I know that phrase just kind of turns people off, but you really do have to kind of understand precepts of effective communication at the group level and at the individual level in order to be an effective leader. Because as well as you could know your job, as well as you could even explain your job, if you can't connect with people, if you can't resonate with the audience, why try? Why bother?
Yeah, and we're definitely both not saying that tough love isn't a thing. Like it still needs to be a thing, but
It is.
if you can't articulate, you're dealing with kids now. I say kids, right? Because you're right. Like a lot of these guys, they weren't even alive when we joined the military. Right? You're dealing with
Young.
kids now that haven't grown up without technology. So when you say something a certain way, they'll just go into AI and be like, "What did this guy really mean?"
Yeah.
They're going to find a way to understand it or dissect the information that you're giving to them.
Yeah. There's a brand of tough love that I've gotten throughout my career that I really love that can be really uniquely empowering. And it doesn't necessarily deconstruct you or what you've done, what you did wrong or what mistake you made. It honestly, like the best tough love speaks more to what you're capable of, you know. this, I don't want to give examples, but there's tough love that I think gets the person that you are trying to correct or trying to grow or strengthen faster than, hazing the shit out of them. I just never like a lot of people are like, bring hazing back and let the drill sergeants put their hands on these. If I've never once wanted to do anything for someone that put hands on me, that's especially at this point in my career. You put hands on me, I'm going to do the opposite of what you want me to do. That's not that's coercion. You know what I mean? That's transactional. It's not transformational. Transformational leadership is that helping people understand what they're capable of, helping them learn from their mistakes, helping them encounter their failure, learn from it, and move on and grow.
Yeah, and there's a balance there to be able to flip people's bunks and make a statement, you know? But yeah, 100%. How do you become an effective communicator? How do you help retention? That's a big thing. Like what you talk about, getting down and talking to people, that's
Yeah.
what helps retention. It's I would argue it's not it could be job satisfaction, but typically it's not unit pride. It's not breathe less, stay whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what
Stay
I mean?
Rockason strong or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, just come on with us for your third 9-month rotation over here to the beautiful name your country.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. I think for me, like recruitment again, the most effective recruiting is gonna happen on that individual basis, man. And it goes back to when you get a soldier to your platoon or to your company or whatever, are you considering what you owe that soldier? They owe you plenty, right? Show up on time, do PT, do your job, be in the motor pool on Monday morning. Got it. They're on the hook for you for some stuff. What are you on the hook to them for? What did that soldier sign up to do? What enriches that soldier? Now, I'm not talking about like the recruiter told them they were going to get stationed in Hawaii and now they're Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I'm talking about what did they understand about this job that they're supposed to be able to do and to learn and to refine and to grow over let's say their first enlistment, that 3 to 5 year window, right? We rarely think about what we owe those soldiers at the leadership level. We know good and well what they owe us, right? That's not a secret. What do I owe this kid? And that's the question I think we need to start asking. What do you owe the people that work for you? Is it, you know, mentorship? What does that mean? Is it happening in a group setting? Is it happening in a one-on-one basis? Is it happening in the field? Is it happening in a classroom? You have to ask those questions. You have to understand what you're on the hook for. I think for different soldiers or different people, that's going to be different. Different people have that spark lit for them in different places.
Yeah, and I personally always give first term soldiers, and any of this stuff is applicable, I believe, to business as well. First term soldiers get a pass because they didn't know what they were signing up for. They didn't. Once you reenlist, you know exactly
Yeah,
what is
you
owed to
knew.
you. And yeah, yeah. And what's crazy to me is this was a couple years ago, right? So I had like 16 years in the army. I'm going back through the Q course again this time, and there was a sergeant that came from the Aiken, right? We're in the Q course together. He made a comment of something I never thought about. He was talking about living in the barracks, right? And in my mind, I was like, yeah, dude, I live in the barracks too. Like these guys, they come through, they check your room, they do whatever. They're gonna come on the weekends. It is what it is. And it's talking about the generational gap. He went, you get BAH to live off post. I don't get BH. Like that's my home. That's where I live. Why do you have to come to my home all the time? Why do you have to come mess where I live? And I was like, he's like, I'm entitled to live there. And I was just like, shit, man. For 16 years, I never thought of it like that. It was just, you're right. We know good and well, you're just going to go through the barracks. Like, that's just what it
Yeah,
is. And
yeah,
I was like, holy crap, man. I never thought of it like that.
yeah. The back end of that is when we go through their rooms and they're like, my humidifier is broken. The water is brown. There's mold everywhere. And he's telling you right then in that moment what you owe him, which as a leader, commander, first sergeant, sergeant major, whatever, are you hearing that kid? You're absolutely right. That's his home. That is directly tied to his recruitment potential. If you tell him to do 3 or 5 more years in a room where the water comes out brown, he's going to laugh at you behind your back.
Dude, it makes you think of your sergeant major impression. I remember I was sitting in a room once and this guy came out and he's all, you guys want the barracks to be better? Too bad. They were the same effing way when I was here 20 years ago as a private. And I was just
Yeah,
like, but you know what? When I was young, I was like, oh yeah, I guess this is the way it is.
yeah, yeah. that mindset is I've told that to people. That's just the way. Why do we do it this way? It's stupid. That's just the way it is. And sometimes that legitimately is the only explanation. Doesn't make it right. And I think that dude, he's phoning it in at that moment. He's just like, I there's probably a way to fix that problem. I don't know it, so that is the way it is. And I'm not willing to do the work. I'm not willing to make a phone call to DPW, which some of that stuff is just that. Some of it's more obviously, when you have a whole installation that's got brown water coming out of the spigot, and you got a bigger problem. But Fort Polk looking at you.
Um, I wanted to shift here because we're still talking about leadership, and I wanted to focus more on the fatherhood type stuff. Obviously, you've given a lot of time to the army, you give a lot of time to the people that you're with. Now you said you're a single father, so you dedicating time to your kids there. What does that look like now? And then how much time are you giving to your kids being able to do that as a single parent?
Um, so it's been a huge shift for me. Um, so I was married for many years, to the mother of my kids. She passed away in April of 25, so about 10 or 11 months ago now. Um, we walked through that. It came very suddenly. It was a very jarring shift for everyone involved. And I, at the time, was coming out of a season of, depression, and I had gone to a rehab facility in February, March timeframe, and was kind of just getting back on my feet at that point when everything happened. To go directly from that to now I am a single father. I am the single point of failure for four human beings. And the person who just passed away is the one who got them signed up for sports, got them signed up for dance, took them to those places, took them on. We homeschooled, so their education was done by this person. Legitimate. I was a very present father before, but it was definitely like looking back from now, it was like I was Uncle Dad. Like I would come home and I would bounce him on my knee and play with him and put him to bed, but the work was being done by their mother. And I told my dad about this the other day. I was like, dude, I see parenting through completely different eyes now because I said earlier, it's if you don't do it, it doesn't happen. And it can be exhausting. So trying to create an environment for them that is calm and predictable and conducive to, learning and relaxation and fun and encouragement is the goal. I don't want to say it always happens perfectly because it's very messy. It's extremely messy. Because again, I'm kind of learning as I go. It's tough to prioritize that time for them. It can be difficult because I've done pretty good work as far as staying in shape and trying to stay healthy in my late 30s, but you just get tired. I work in a cubicle. Like it blows my mind. It pisses me off actually, because I legitimately, the hardest thing I do every day is go to the gym. Other than that, I'm in a cubicle or in a meeting somewhere, driving around in my truck. I don't, I don't do construction. I'm not working on an oil rig, but I get home after picking them up from school and I want to go to sleep. And so you're fighting exhaustion. You're fighting, never mind the fact that I have this other thing in the periphery where I'm making videos, which I enjoy doing, but it's a dual function, right? Those videos are monetized. Like that is income for my family. And I very much try to view that as a second job. As to try to take my day job as serious as possible, right? Because that's we signed a dotted line for that one. But you know, it's the work's not necessarily over when I get off work and get them home. You know, I've had struggles trying to even just getting them to bathe on a regular basis. They're still kind of in that phase where they're learning, like, you got to shower every couple of days. Laundry is a disaster. I mean, sometimes it backs up real bad, man. Homework, mental health, there's a lot of things. I had to outlaw Roblox in my house for the one reason that Roblox is I don't know how familiar you guys are with it in your family, but it's like crack for kids and it's extremely, extremely problematic in terms of the access that creepy adults have to that game and the access that they're given to your kids in that game. So that game has been outlawed from my house. But just, little things like you know, limiting video game and TV time and trying to give them things that make them happy, but not give them so much that they just kind of reclude. Therapy, taking them to therapy, taking them to appointments. I'm very thankful. I'll give a shout out to my boss. I won't throw his name out there because he's a rather private guy, but he at one point in his career was an active duty warrant officer actually, and a single father and raising his kids. And so he's extremely understanding of any time I have to come out of the link and go take care of kids stuff. So I'm grateful for that. It ain't for the faint of heart, man. It ain't. We have fun. We have a lot of fun. We went to the movies this weekend and saw The GOAT. We do a lot of family stuff. We go eat together. Um, sometimes we'll order pizza and watch a movie together. We'll play Among Us. We have family Among Us. We'll all sit in the living room and play Among Us together and figure out who the killer is and all that stuff. We have a good time, but there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges.
What do you do to prioritize your mental health? I had a saying a while back. I was telling people I got an opportunity to go talk to some guys from the 82nd, and I said two things. I said, if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your family, and if you can't take care of your family, you're not going to be able to take care of work. And I coupled that with military jargon, imagining a support by fire position. Your family is the support by fire that's like laying it down so you can just keep going and doing your career. Where eventually, if you don't stop and give them ammo or give them what they need, your support by fire is going to run out and you're going to be out there all by yourself. And I say that because that was me for a while.
Yeah, it is. It is it's a situation where you're constantly trying and failing and using that failure as kind of like, okay, that didn't work. That doesn't work for our family. That doesn't work for me. Right. It's funny because you use the support by fire. Like I've definitely bounded a little bit too far forward in a given direction, or even on one kid. When you have a lot of like 4 kids, a lot of kids, there's been times where I've seen a need in one of my kids and dialed in so closely on that I completely ignore a need of the other. 4 and they're getting older now, so they all have different personalities, and knowing how to love and nourish 4 personalities at any given state of the ebb and flow of their mood and their affect and all that. It's a lot, and there's some days where it'll break you, I mean, I've had some rough nights. I've had some nights where, like I said, I lay down and I'm like, "Dude, I'm ruining these kids." Legitimately. I don't hold that to be an inherent truth. I really am doing the best I can for them, and just trying to give them some semblance of a normal childhood, but it is tough. There's like I can't sugarcoat it, and I wouldn't anyway because I think, transparency, I think, is your friend, and I try to use that with them. I try to be transparent with them. If I'm having a hard day or if I'm feeling grouchy or if I'm struggling, I don't hide that from them. I'm strong for them. It's like you said, there's a time to button up and power through. Put it in your rucksack, as you say, but I never really try to hide the fact because my kids are perceptive. They can see like, man, dad's going through it. They know. So yeah, it's really it's a balancing act. Every day is kind of just I've learned so much about myself and who I am as a father over these last few months.
Yeah, and I think this is super important, like we talked about before too, is that the basis of this podcast is like to reach somebody else. There's somebody else out there who's a single dad who's living it right now. Maybe even somebody in uniform that watches your videos and like, dude, he's got it all together. Look at, he's just making these videos and he's crushing it at life. And you are, but behind it is a guy who's a dad, who's a normal individual, like everybody else is just trying to figure it out, you know? And hats off to you, man, because that's a lot. I mean, I got 2 kids and I feel like that's a lot. I couldn't imagine 2 more.
2 no, 2 is a lot, man. 2 the jump from 1 to 2 is crazy. And as an encouragement, it was a pretty bleak outlook of single parenthood for me, but as an encouragement, I will tell you that, the reward you feel in your heart for what you do when you show up for kids, especially kids who've gone through something horrific. You know, I struggle a lot. I have to kind of coach myself a little bit, but I will say I feel very proud to be their dad. And I'm dad first. Those videos, you get minute long looks at my life each day, and I'm acting like a different person. There is very little sincerity as far as who I am in my content these days. And that's not to say that I don't allow myself to do that. The original goal for me in making content was just to give something people can laugh at. You know, I've seen a lot of content creators go from making stuff that was funny and relatable and just kind of goofy for a second to making things that remind them about all the horrific things that are going on in the world right now. And I think it's important to stay up to date and to know what's going on, but we need a break from that sometimes. And I'd rather be a part of that. I don't want to remind people about how awful 2025 or 2026 or 2027 is going to be. I don't. I'd rather give them a chance to take a knee and just say, "Hey, you know what helps me? Laughing. Let's laugh for 60 seconds and then drive on."
Dude, that's huge. I mean, you can find doom and gloom no matter where you look, no matter what year it is. And that little bit of reprieve. And I'll tell you this, I was talking to somebody and they had sent me some of your content and I was laughing at it, right? It was and he said it made him reach out to some buddies that he hadn't talked to in a long time. And when he actually did reach out to him, he reached out to his buddy that was struggling. That it was just by himself, right? Like just didn't want to reach out to anybody, was staying secluded. He's like, dude, watching these videos was all the stuff that we laughed about when we were in, or, hearing Sergeant Major yell about some stupid thing about, like I laugh, man, because I love them because they're just, I was an NCO for so long and, the one about uniforms when it's snowing outside and he's like, and gloves. And it's like, he's like, dude, it made me think of the guys that I was with. And when I went back through my phone and I started checking on them and realized that one of them was having a real rough time, like it invigorated me. So your content's making an impact with people that maybe you don't even get a comment, you know.
I appreciate that, man. And that's a huge encouragement. I try to kind of work in as much of a, I don't want to say a plot line, but like as I started wheeling the characters out, like people would just kind of remember the lore for each character a little bit. And so I really wanted to work in themes of the friendships that you build in the army. I have this character Crafton who's like he's an oddball, kind of real bad hygiene and weird hobbies and stuff like that. And at one point, I kind of had this arc going in the videos where he gets a roommate and he's shacked up with this other kid who's a lot more kind of clean cut PT stud kind of kid. He's like a burnt out E4 mafia type dude who hates him at first, and then they form a friendship out of that. And I wanted to kind of have things like that where it's like, look, you're gonna join the army and be around people that you probably would have hated before, but when one or both of you PCSs, you're gonna think about that guy a lot. You're gonna miss him. You're gonna want to call. Like my friends, 18 years deep. I still keep spotty contact with the dudes that I went to Iraq with my first assignment. Friends for life, man. And honestly, like in the times that I've gotten to see them since then, we carried it on like we hadn't missed a day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. I was just in Germany not long ago, and I ran into a guy that I was in Afghanistan with in 2011, and it was like we picked up, and it is crazy, man. I
Yeah,
mean, and
it is.
that's what's important, those are the relationships and everything else. And I can't tell you enough, like, how much that content is helping people. I mean, I'll get a random text from somebody. I was laughing because the craft and thing made me think of a supply guy that I had, right? And I was just like, yeah, well, it's pretty spot on. But I had a text from somebody about that, and it made me think that you're right. Everyone comes from a different background. Everybody comes, and again, this is going to apply to business. But when I came in the army, I met people that never even had a pair of like new shoes. They showed
Yeah,
up and they got that Eagle Cash was a deployment thing, but whatever they got when they came into basic training, right? That you had to charge your card and they bought their first brand new pair of shoes because they were made to get PT shoes. And you're like, holy crap, man. I didn't even know people didn't have shoes,
yeah. No,
you know?
I one of the Actually, the soldier that Crafton is based on is a soldier I had in Korea who not great hygiene and was smelling, didn't smell great. And he was my soldier. So the other NCOs were like, Green, you gotta say something to him, man. Come on.
Yeah, they're all like,
Yeah. So yeah, I got the booger flicked on me for that one. But I sat him down. I was like, look, man, you stink. What's going on? And he, in tears, was like, I don't know how to work a washer and dryer. I never learned. And it was like, dude. And again, that's those like, yeah, he owed me showing up on time and being shaved and clean and all that stuff. I had no idea that was something that I was on the hook for him for. You just, you know, and you really don't know until you have those one-on-one moments with these guys and you sit them down and you really, without asking them, what are your needs? You're asking them, what are your needs? What do you need to get a fire lit in you so that we can go kill this elk and drag it back to the cave, man? You gotta have those moments. You gotta ask questions. You gotta kind of dig with people and do it from, you gotta understand gentleness, Yeah, we're in a professional arms and stacking bodies, yada yada. But if you don't understand gentleness to a certain extent, you're gonna lose some of your people as far as attention is concerned.
imagine if that kid is the one that's opening and closing your store, right? Like you're a business owner and he doesn't know what he's doing. Like that. Imagine as a business owner, when you talk about retention, you come in and teach that kid something that may stick with him for the rest of his life. And maybe he will leave your organization and go on, like the army, or he'll leave working at X store and go into another one, but he'll never forget that lesson and he'll pay it forward. And like that is what's going to make society better.
I think
You know,
so. I think so.
we're we're more connected now than we've ever been, but we're more alone than we've ever been because you can just sit by yourself and send a text message.
Yeah. And it's really, I think we've got to just put a little bit more emphasis on, making time. It's like making time for your kids. You got two kids, and that's two separate blocks of times that you really have to make for two different people. You got to make time for these people. And maybe it's not every day. Maybe it's not even every week. Maybe you got a loop and you're just like, all right, it's Wednesday on the third week of March. I got to go talk to Smith and check up on his divorce or check up on his sick grandma back home, or check up on her bills that she was behind on, like those these people come in the army and they still face very real American problems. We don't pay them a ton, and not to mention the relationship strain. It's putting same strain that you're dealing with, they're dealing with. So,
Yeah. No, 100%, man. Well, what is One Punch Dad looking to as you go into the rest of 2026 here?
I've kind of started, kind of. I'm trying to work on kind of upping the quality of my content little by little, and to keep it sustainable to where I'm not, you know, breaking myself over the coals trying to get content made or make something every day. I don't post every day anymore, and it's been such a relief to let myself off the hook for that. Engagement, algorithms, all that stuff is just kind of like, man, that will become your master really fast in your life. And you want to talk about like dropping some balls with your kids and your job, become a content creator and let it rule your life and realize how fast that can happen. So really just kind of planting a foot and saying, if I have a joke, if I have a video idea and I got the time, I'll throw it out there. If I don't, it doesn't happen. I find I make better content that way. When I have made content lately, it has, I think, been connecting with people again in a way that's like I kind of lost a little bit because there was a time after my wife passed away that I didn't feel funny. I almost shuttered everything at one point. I was just going to walk away from it. I'm glad I didn't because it's I'm glad it's helping other people. It's very medicinal for me as well. But yeah, just trying to do a little bit more thought out pieces, trying to do, obviously a better look to the video and audio and stuff. I've been working with some animation that I'm pretty excited about. So trying to implement. So my goal is to become a voice actor after I get out of the army and hopefully do some high profile like animation voice acting or maybe hopefully maybe something in a video game or something like that. I'm I'm hopeful that I can get involved in something like that, and then just trying to implement that in my own content as well. Animation takes a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So that's kind of my side hobby that I've been kind of tinkering with and just kind of seeing how I can use that to get some jokes and get some content out there. And then yeah, so I'm in a band as well. I'm in a band called Bear the Mark out of Amarillo, my hometown. Actually, it's kind of more of a local thing. We don't do big, multi-state tours or anything, but we do have music that's out there on Spotify. It's a real fun time. Every couple of weeks, I go home and we play a show there. We play a show at this town, and man, we
What's the
just
name
have.
of it again?
It's called Bear the Mark, Bare the Mark. Just real kind of like heavy. I don't know if you're into like deathcore or you know fighting people music, but it's quite heavy and it's quite fun to play and people really enjoy it. We've had a lot of really good turnouts. We always have a really good time. That's kind of a thing I just do for me. It's been great to be back on stage and playing music that I enjoy, music that I helped write with good friends that I've known for many years. So yeah, writing new music for that. Trying to get some songs put together for the next year. Yeah, and that's kinda it, man. Just kinda, I don't have some, like, huge iron in the fires, like, well, I can't say much about it right now, but I'm honestly, I'm just trying to make the videos that I think brought people to me initially and continue to try to innovate in ways that make it funny and new, and pleasant to watch and listen to, but not reinventing the wheel or anything, just kinda trying to keep the laughs coming. That's honestly it for me in 2026.
Heck yeah. I wanted to ask you a question before we close it out. I got asked this. Eh, what were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now? Now that you've gotten older, you're looking at things, you've experienced everything you've experienced.
When you say then, you mean just, like, when I was 19, 20, like, first starting
Yeah,
out on the
yeah,
army
like
or
when you were younger, or even just a handful of years ago, like
yeah,
before your wife passed and like time changed. Was there anything you were afraid of then that it's completely changed your
sure.
mindset now?
Well, I think for many, many years, I'd say all throughout my 20s, my greatest fear was not utilizing my potential, maybe running out of time before I got to play in a band again or got to try acting again or got to do the things that are very personally edifying to me or missing some opportunity like that. Not getting everything that's in me out before I die. That was a big fear I had for a long time. And it still kind of is. There's still things that I have bouncing around in my brain. I'm like, man, I want to make that happen before I go. Far beyond that, though, now, I think tantamount to that was a fear of losing one of my kids, something happening to one of my kids. Strangely, that's still obviously that's a concern I have absolutely as a father. Their safety is paramount for me, but strangely more than that, I fear letting them down. And when I say letting them down, I don't mean like my parents raised me really well, but for a lot of years I was just very critical, like, well, they could have did this instead of that, whatever. My parents didn't let me down. My parents were there for me. My parents showed up for me. They loved me how they knew how to love me. They loved me a hell of a lot better than both of them got loved. Imperfect though it was. They're aces in my book. And they get extra points for how they showed up for me after my wife died, and they are there for my kids in a way that honestly it blows me away. That's what I wanna do for my kids, and my fear is that I will miss an opportunity to do that for them at some point in their life, not even just as children, but I'm 37 years old. My parents, when I called my dad and informed him what had happened, he was working in his garden. My dad, who's 62 years old, broke into a sprint to come to where I was at and to go to leap into action. And that in that moment was super inspiring for me as a father. So that's my fear is just like not leaping into action and not being there for my kids in a moment where they needed me. Um, Yeah, yeah, it's strangely now that I've gone through a loss recently and it's a terrible thing, it's horrifying, but to know that they're alive and that I did not show up for them in some critical way is a huge fear that I have.
Dude, that's that. I mean, I think this entire conversation has been awesome, but that right there, I think is gonna hit home with a lot of people because without it being said, I think a lot of us have that fear.
It can be paralyzing sometimes because you don't wanna make the wrong move, and in a lot of ways, I think my parents dealt with that too. but they made a move, and it wasn't always the most graceful thing. It was my upbringing was good. It was I didn't come from a troubled home, but it was clunky. My parents did things they probably shouldn't have done. They said things to me that they shouldn't have said, but they never once failed to show up for me and to be a mom and to be a dad for me. And I now that I'm older and wiser, I will never criticize their performance as parents again because I know regardless of how it looked to me, they put in a lot of effort to get me raised. And that's all I want to do for my kids is just put in that effort. And if I screw it up in some way and that they got an axe to grind when they get older, I'm happy to take accountability for that. Because at the end of the day, I am on the hook for these kids for a lot more than they're on the hook to me. They don't owe me a thing. I owe them a lot. And that's a fundamental way that it's different than soldiers is that the kids don't owe you a thing. They don't owe you a football scholarship or a law degree or nothing. You owe them. So you better at least show up.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate it, man. That's awesome. I really appreciate the conversation. I'm honestly like blown away and really speechless at a lot of that because I agree with all of it.
Well,
And
I enjoyed it, man. I'm glad we got to do this.
yeah, I want to say thank you for responding. I like to tell people when they like individuals content, uh, when they feel like they might connect with that individual, they look at a follower count or they look at what they're putting out and like, oh, this person will never get back to me. And well, why don't you just try? Why don't you try? Uh, you know, that's how we got connected, and
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
I try to do a little DM dive every once in a while, and I get you get a lot of garbage, in there. Sometimes just straight up nastiness, but occasionally, I try to read most everything that comes my way, and I try to hit anything that comes to me that's sincere, whether it's even just like, "Hey, I love your content. Hey, it helped me out. I joined the army because of this or that or whatever," or stuff like this. Like, hey, I want to have a real conversation that might potentially be helpful for someone. I try to find those, and this has definitely been a good one. I hope we can run it back someday. Maybe tag up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then we're gonna get this edited and sent out. And if there's anything ever we can do for you, man, here you got my number. You just send me a message, and we're here to help you.
You bet. Likewise, man. Any way I can help.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Good times. Thanks, man.